cuts, $51.5 billion. Okay, there's the math. They told us there'd be no math. Let's bring in our panel. Jonah Goldberg, at-large editor of National Review Online. Erin Billings, editor of Roll Call, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Jonah, both sides are guilty of what we will call fuzzy math on the cuts, the total cuts. But for the negotiations to start and the vice president to essentially be bringing $2.5 billion, if you say that the $4 billion is expected in the next continuing resolution.
Right.
What about that as a starting point against $61 billion in cuts by the Republicans?
Well, it seems to me, first of all, the $40 billion is obviously bogus. You know, in 2010, my daughter asked me for a pony. In 2011, she hasn't got it in 2011. That doesn't mean I've saved a lot of money on ponies. But look, what the White House is trying to do is count on how fuzzy all of this is and how eye-glazingly incomprehensible and boring these numbers are, so that they can get away with saying that they're being reasonable, they're being centrist, they're being responsible, and cutting $50 billion when they're really not. And this is all part of this meeting halfway thing, so they can claim to be the voices of reason against these crazy Republicans. And so I think all the numbers, in many ways, are simply props for those talking points, and they're sticking to them. And you can tell they're being disciplined. Joe Biden was taciturn. Joe Biden said enough to fill one bumper sticker. That is saying these guys are on message.
Erin, what about this negotiation process, where we are, and all these numbers back and forth?
Well, right. Look, the numbers are in the eyes of the beholder. I mean, the $100 billion figure that Republicans were touting earlier really isn't accurate either. I mean, it is closer to the $60 billion.
Right. So let's say you take the $41 billion that the Democrats, that the White House is using, they get to $61 billion of real cuts.
Right.
Republicans are saying.
Right. And
in the budget for the rest of the year.
Right, and then we have less than $10 billion of real cuts on the Democratic side. Right, the math doesn't really add up. But what I will say is, even though Biden didn't really say much, which we know is unusual for this vice president, I think it's telling. I think that says that the negotiations are legit. Had they come out and slanted each other and, attacked each other, I mean, these members left. The leaders left this meeting and didn't say anything. None of them would comment. They obviously said, all right, we are legitimately going to try to get to some kind of compromise. Look, they have to. Nobody wants a government shutdown. No one wants to have this debate stretch on and on and on, and they don't want to do, these short-term resolutions.
Although I would argue there are 87 Republican freshmen who may not be afraid of a government shutdown because they want House Speaker Boehner to hold the line.
That is true. There are many of them. I don't know if all 87, but certainly a lot of those freshman Tea Party-inspired members don't, a shutdown really isn't of consequence to them. But Boehner's a pretty, he's getting pretty adept at being Speaker, and I think he will do what it takes to make sure a shutdown is averted. He doesn't want it either. He knows that it's bad news for either party. But I do think that there is hope for some kind of a deal. I think that less is more when it comes to Joe Biden in this statement.
Charles.
I'm not sure that everyone is against seeing these stopgap cuts passed every 2 weeks. I'd like to see it. I'll bet there are a lot of Republicans who'd like to see it. It's the grounds on which the Republicans would like to argue. The Democrats are the one who can't stand that and want to have one deal that at least will put them through until October and to fight another day on another ground. For Republicans, I think the argument is this, that they are offering a fairly real 61 in cuts. The White House is offering roughly 10 in cuts. That's not halfway. That's a sixth of the way. Unless the Democrats have a serious offer on the table, I think the Republicans ought to say, every 2 weeks we're going to cut to $4 billion. We have just had a GAO report last week which spoke of 100 to 200 of waste in there.
Billion.
And Republicans ought to say, okay, how about doing 4 out of those 200, and let's do it in 2 weeks, and we'll do. And what are the Democrats going to say? Stand up to the country and say we can't find $4 billion in real cuts out of all that stuff that the GAO has already identified? I think the Republicans win on this issue unless the Democrats offer a serious cut. I would say no to extension until October.
Last word, Jonah. It's interesting to see Gene Sperling out kind of describing where they are specifically and trying to make this math work for reporters. Are they selling it well?
I don't think so. I mean, that's truly in the eye of the beholder. But I don't think anyone finds this stuff persuasive. But they're doing the best they can, and they're going to have a lot of friendly help in the media about this and all of the rest. But I was reading that transcript with Gene Sperling, and it sounded like someone was arguing with a flight attendant who just didn't want to tell you the plane's not taking off. I mean, it is a very, very weird conversation.
Up next.